بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Peace and love. I'm Brother Ali. This is the Travelers Podcast, and this week's episode is very special. I say that every single week, and I really believe it. You know what I mean? Every time I say that phrase, I believe it. And it's always our aim and our intention that I'm not going to spend all of the time that it takes me to do this episode and then the producer, BK1, to edit everything and get everything together and treat the sound and process everything and get it all ready to be presented to you. And we're not going to ask for your time. There are so many things that are vying for our attention and our time and our thoughts. So this is your time and this is my time and our time, but this is also our time together. And so our intention is to always have it be something thoughtful, something that's special. Heard it said one time that one shouldn't speak unless they're going to improve upon silence. And that's a major, major assignment and a major task. But this week on the Travelers Podcast, we have one of the most creative, one of the most prolific, one of the truly greatest, one of the most soulful, one of the most musical, one of the most vulnerable and thought provoking MCs to ever enter into the hip hop space and culture. He's also a producer. He is also a ghostwriter. When I say that Pharoahe Monch is one of the greatest of all times, it's not just me saying that. On Jay-Z's first album, Reasonable Doubt, which he regards to be his lyrical masterpiece. If you talk to Jay-Z about all the amazing music that he's made, what he will say is that my greatest project and my greatest lyrical moments were actually in Reasonable Doubt, because he wasn't hip to making radio records yet. He was still spitting the way that he wanted to spit. When he says later, I dumbed down for my audience and doubled my dollars. If skill sold, truth be told, I'd probably be Talib Kweli, etc. So Jay-Z comes from this school of really profoundly creative and intricate lyricism. And what Jay-Z said on Reasonable Doubt is crime organized like the Pharaoh. He's referring to organized confusion in Pharoahe Monch. Eminem and all of the amazing lyricism that he's displayed over the decades that he's been doing it and just giving the culture so much. He has a song called Rap God where he says, that I'm doing all of this and I've done all these things. I've sold all these records. But in terms of my own approach to this, I'm still on my Pharoahe Monch underground grind. Like I'm still trying to produce lyrics that are of the caliber of Pharoahe Monch. So you have, arguably two of the greatest, or at least the most renowned and respected and successful MCs that are known for the craft of MCing. That there are people that make huge hit records, but when it comes to like, what does the mainstream know? And even what does the hip hop culture and music industry know about the lyricists, the great lyricists that are doing it, that are operating at that massive global scale? Those are probably the two first names that would come up for people, are Jay-Z and Eminem. Both of them have put into their masterpieces that Pharoahe Monch is somebody that they want to be in conversation with in the art form. So the great Pharoahe Monch is here. You're going to hear us talk about the actual craft of composing his lyrics. And this is a show where I usually want to connect with people. These are all my friends or people that I've been like one person away for a long time, but people that I connect with personally. And there are so many different, most of these people that are on this program are people that get interviewed a lot. And so often they're asked about, how did you make it? Or like, tell me about your secrets for success, or tell me the crazy stories of your career, or tell me, and those are things that I like to hear too. But for me, what's most important is, what did your heart experience? Where does this come from inside of you? So we talked to Pharoahe, though, about his process of writing rhymes. And it's something that I usually don't do, but with him, I thought it was really important to do that, because it's not just a cerebral, like brain practice for him. It is. He's literally hitting on all cylinders, possibly more than any other MC, in terms of being musical and soulful and cerebral and witty and intricate and intelligent, but it's also very, very heartfelt. And I know that when he's writing these songs, his heart is going on a journey. I also partially know this because he's my friend. And it's like the fact that I'm close friends with Pharoahe Monch, and it's not just that I call him for advice, but he calls me when he's caught up on stuff as well. And sometimes you just need an artist. You just need to like talk to somebody else that cares about this the way you care about and is feeling the heartbreaks and that you're feeling. The other part of this conversation, I wanted to really dive into his journey as an artist because while people like Eminem and Jay-Z will tell the world this is the guy that inspires me, he's had a really, I call it the tragic kind of tension between art and being in the music industry, coming up with a hit record. And what you'll hear in this conversation is that Pharoah Monch, after all these years of being so lauded by all these very successful artists, made his own hit record. He made Simon Says, Get the fuck up. Yeah, I said it. Pharoah Monch ain't a damn thing changed. Bomb, 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 bomb. And whatever music business stuff happens, he gets into the story here, but the samples didn't get cleared. So not only did he make a hit record, but he produced it himself. He created it entirely himself after being given the sample by one of the homies. He made this entire thing himself. And then the record blew up and it went all over the world and it continues to be all over the world. But because the samples didn't get cleared, not only did that song get stricken off the shelves, but the whole album got pulled off of shelves. And so what should have been his most shining moment in terms of the music industry was actually a heartbreak for him. And then he had them over and over and over and over and over again. And with all of the things he's endured, he's continued to just gift this culture and this art form and really the world with some of the most profound music of all time. So I'm going to shut up and jump into this episode. We're sponsored, as always, by the Zakat Foundation. We're sponsored by Inner City Muslim Action Network, and we're brought to you also by BetterHelp. We'll talk to you all about all those in a minute. But thank you so much for being here and enjoy this episode of the Travelers Podcast. There's always this conversation about greats, like who's the great, and we talk top five and who's the GOAT and what have you. And I think that you could really make a case for a number of artists. But if you look at it from an artist perspective, I don't think anybody has more claim, and I think I could prove it. Nobody has more of a claim to being the greatest that ever worked in this art form than you, in my opinion. And I know that you don't see yourself that way. But the reason that I say that is because if you think about like what an MC is the lyricism, the vocal performance, whether or not they produce their on stage performance. And when you talk about lyricism, usually people are either intricate or they're simplistic. They're like either like very intricate and tight and mathematical, or they're very free.
Hmm.
And you're both. Usually people are either conceptual, so like either they're not talking about anything, but if they're talking about something, either they're conceptual or they're personal and vulnerable. And you're both.
Hmm.
When we talk about vocal performances, usually people are either very powerful or they're very soulful, and you're both. Most people are either rhythmic or musical, and you're both. Either they're very strong in the fundamentals or they're very creative and free, and you're both.
Hmm.
Along with the fact that an amazing producer and an amazing live performer. So, I mean, I think looking at it now, the only thing that I could say that certain other people might have over you is this idea of affecting broader culture, like crossing over into the broader culture. But so much of being an artist is the tragic tension between creating art and then the business and fame element of it.
Hmm.
So, for my money, in terms of like the great ones that I look up to, like the music and art in general is such a spiritual thing. It's very human. It's like cultural and spiritual. It's like the most human that we can be, and it's also the most divine that we can be. But the business is everything but that. It's the complete opposite of that. Like it's born in slavery. The entertainment industry and all that is born in slavery. So that tension between those is something that as an artist, like I relate to what I see in you as somebody for me to look up to more than I relate to somebody who feels like they're always winning in that space.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Uh, got emotional. I mean, we speak quite often sometimes, and we have these type of discussions. I think, early on, my appreciation for culture and hip hop culture is was my take on trying to learn from different elements that I was affected by, and it wasn't just the MC. Like it was like, how does this graffiti tell a story of these characters, or from black books to fashion to b-boy to dancing, and before I became an MC, I would watch somebody in a circle breaking or popping or whatever, and come up with different moves each week to add on, not to just battle, but to elevate the culture. So when I decided to become an MC, it was like you need to implement so many things to affect other people like that. How is it that this dude just did a move and it inspired you to go home and create? How is he communicating that to you? So I realized I wanted all these elements, as well as during that time, I'm a huge fan of Rakim and Kane and G-Rap and Chuck and Kool Keith and LL and KRS-One. And I'm like, oh man, like on a Marvel level, if I could absorb these powers, what would I implement? I loved KRS's crisp diction,
Mhm.
and the way he emphasized his words made them cut through, like nobody else that was doing it. Obviously, the content, and he's he's just in my top five forever. But what element, if you could take from him, that you would use? Um, and just like you said, the goosebump element. Chuck was the first one that I was like, geez, my hair is standing up on my arm
Mhm.
on this song, and I just got to chill. Like, examine why that happened to you. And when I examined it, I was like, it has to be a combination of vocal tone, content, plus truth. Why does Martin Luther King's speech do this to you every time?
Mhm.
What's happening?
Mhm.
Like, I'm relating to what he's saying, it's impacting me. He's saying it in such a way with a vibration that's like, ooh, 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 ooh. So I was like, if you want to be an MC, if you want to elevate, you have to move people in that way. Possibly listen back to it yourself and be like I felt that. And I'm constantly like, do you believe yourself, which is the last thing. Like, I listen back, and most times I'm like, I don't know if I believe, I don't know if you're cutting through like that. You know, you could do that again. You could voice that again, and you make yourself believe it. And you're not gonna, get everybody, but there'll be some. You can influence some people out there with, brag bars or social bars or introspective bars. Just make sure it's cutting through to you. Like, man, I felt that. So throughout the years, as an artist, you always leave a piece of work, and my production partner, the great Lee Stone, always says you should like listen to older songs sometimes and be able years later to be like, I might have would have did this differently, or because you're always trying to create better art. And I think that's how you grow. Like, coming from culture that used to snap on each other too,
Mhm.
I was looking to like protect myself from that, and then once it's down, reverse it and kind of pick it apart and be your worst critic. And like, what can you pick apart about these things that are not quite there in your so-called elements of, is that the choice Rakim would have made, or G-Rap would have made, or Chris would have made? And once I got past those things, I think I was able to find my own voice. But those are definitely the cats that are responsible guiding me to find my own voice.
The first time I met you was at the Wake Up show,
Mm,
and we were both playing Rock the Bells, and I went to the Wake Up show, and King Tech was like, "You know you got a freestyle," and I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I usually have to tell people it's gotta be off the head, but I don't have to tell you that." And I was like, "No, sir." So I got the headphones
mhm.
and I'm I'm just closing my eyes, doing my thing, and I'm trying to assess it. I'm like, "I don't know if I'm killing it or not." And I opened my eyes and you were sitting there. And I was like, I thought my head just got hot and I was like, "Oh, man, oh." Because one of the things that I had been told is, like, people told me, like, "There's something in your voice that sounds like mine, that sounds like Ice Cube, and there's something that reminds us of Pharaoh."
Mhm.
And so I was like, and you've always been, like, so kind to me, I was like, "Man, people tell me sometimes that I sound like you. Do you think I sound like you?" And you were like, "No, we both love Chuck D and Farrakhan." It was like, it's just a preacher thing. You know what I mean? So when you mention
Yeah.
Chuck and then Martin Luther King, it's like,
Mhm,
there's that, but the thing though that is that you have a level of musicality that's you know, because I'm saying, like, it's not that Chuck isn't musical, and I mean
mhm,
Farrakhan was a musician. There is a musicality to what they do, but I also have heard you say that John Coltrane is like one of your main influences too. What's
mm.
how do you see that? How do you see the John Coltrane influence?
I had a family full of music lovers, and he was one of my oldest brother's favorites as well as my father's. So just listening. But then, I equate that to the asthma, and then, deciding to become an MC, and then having this hurdle, this curse of this breathing issue, and listening to Coltrane do these long sustains and runs, and I would just be like, how in the hell is his lungs able to do that? And I want to be that. Like, I want to be able to sustain a run, go past the usual measures, and perform like that. And I think Coltrane was the influence in that, as well as how is he saying all of this to me without saying anything. So again, it made me early on pay attention to tone.
Mhm,
Like, how could you say the same words as someone else, but hold it long enough, or express, like an actor, express the pain or tension, using your voice as an instrument, with limited words or a little bit of words in a bar. And, that's what Coltrane like gave to me. Like, what is this song about? What is this emotion about? What is it really about? What is he Why did he write this, and what is he thinking at these points? And how is he getting this emotion across to me? And that ties into, me saying, if I'm gonna be an MC, I have to defeat this lung disease
mhm.
at the same time. And that kind of pushed me to think about asthma in a sense of, I'm going to show you, like, I'm not going to let you. In fact, I'm going to be the windiest. I'm going to try to be the windiest MC,
That's
with
right.
the most words. You
That's
know what
right.
I mean? Like, just to show you that you can't beat me. So it was the asthma that kind of pushed me in that direction. I
Mhm.
think if I didn't have asthma, I would have been a way more simplistic MC. Yeah.
That's crazy. My first album's called Shadows on the Sun, and being an albino, it's like the sun is always trying to kill me.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
like, the idea
Hmm.
that, like, Imma shine so bright that I put shadows on the sun. I've heard you talk about this before, and, like, I try to think about, like, what is that particular thing that you developed? And you talking about Coltrane, like, Coltrane is so known for being this, like, really expressive, like, out free, creative
Hmm.
player that could, like, squawk and play 2 notes at once and, like, made all these sounds with the horn that people had never made before. But they basically say that every minute when he's not recording or on stage, he's doing scales.
Hmm.
He's, like, running scales. He's doing very, very basic, like, his fundamentals and foundational stuff is, like, he's always going back to that so that when it's time to go out, he can. And that's something that I really see in you, but I wonder, like, can you describe like what is that particular technique? To me, it feels like there's like a reservoir of air, and then you find a tone that you can operate in that feels like it's like it requires the least amount of output. Like it seems like a constant stream of air. It's
Mhm.
almost like a shelf. It's almost like the voice sits on a shelf, and then it
Mhm.
can roll. It can just roll forward,
Mhm.
rather
Mhm.
than having a bunch of starts and stops. Rather than being
Mhm.
very percussive. So rather than
Right.
like the way that like a twister would do it, or the way that
Mhm.
certain others would do it, it's like a, you know what I'm saying? Pistol no motherfucking Mike House blowing up the way rocking the brand. Like it, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like it seems
Mhm.
like there's
Mhm.
less. How do you describe that, or like what kind of insight can you give for like what that the technology of how that's happening?
It's so interesting, man, and lyricism is so expansive on so many levels, and still not given its proper due of how expansive it is. I think at the time of recording and not having a lot of budgets again and becoming an MC and recording to cassette tape with your DJ, extending the break, and then, can't mess up. And then I got to give that same microphone to Prince Poe. And sometimes we're both on the same mic. That era kind of forced me into control, sustain, and also, you can't mess up. You know what I mean? So it's so many different elements that brought out those original flows and styles. And that was taken when we got a deal into the studio.
Mhm,
And, I'd be sitting there, out in the booth, and it's like Prince and OC and all these people in the room, and I'm
mhm,
doing my part. And like the conversation is being had about Jay-Z now. It's like if you didn't do it in one take, these complicated things, it was just
right.
like you could hear people like in the room like, "You suck, Prince. What are you doing? Oh my God, Prince smashed you. Coming out of the booth, you don't even deserve to be on the song." And it's like, it was a different standard
Right.
of how we recorded, to now, um, moving forward, I want to get back into that as well as, you know, I love breath now. Sometimes I'm sitting there with an engineer and you're mixing and you hear, and then I'm like, if that was on beat and somehow funky, let's leave it. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? Like,
mhm.
and then sometimes you want things clean. It's like the technology is, different, but like I like errors. I like words being wrong. Like I said that wrong. That's not even what this is not even a word, bro, because I was freestyling it and made it up. And I'm like, let's leave it. Like
Mhm.
it's just funky. Like, the Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson, look over your shoulders, plural. Like, just
Right.
leave it, man, and say like, let's not record that again. And so all of those elements I'm looking back to see what feels good. You know what I mean? And when I would hit those constants, like you said back then, it would just be like liquid. And I remember being like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's more sax,
Yes.
like you said, when it's more sax than it is emceeing. You know what I mean? So that was an element. Like,
When was the first time that you
yeah,
noticed that like you were doing that? Like, do you remember, was there like a moment where it's like, yo?
probably during the Extinction Agenda era, there was some elements that I listen back to now, and it's like you said. How do you explain this to somebody that's not in the lyricism? It's not so much the ball or the rhyme or the line or the punchline. Sometimes it's like where it started to where it end, the tone and what that sounded like, and the expression
Mhm,
that has me like, whoa, my God, that was incredible. Like, who is this guy? Like, I still say that to this day. Like, and that's what art is about. Like, who painted that? Like, I'm different now. Like the environment is different now. My
Mhm.
breathing is different now. Like how
Mhm.
can I even, that's the beauty of those things. Like it did paint a picture. And so it's a blessing to look back at that stuff and be like, man, I just that's like one of one. Not me, but that piece right there. You know what I mean?
Do you write your joints on paper?
Um, some lately, and a lot of things over the last 10 years, it's kind of like a combination of freestyle, which everybody does. Like I got into more listening to the music and just letting God speak rather than sitting down to the paper.
Mm.
Originally, I remember being in a session with Dr. Dre and I was writing, you know, and I would be like, on the top of the paper, I would be like, dilapidate, capitate, extrapolate. That is he walked by and he was like, oh shit, DOC writes like that. He just puts the words there and
MashaAllah.
he figures it out, right? I
Yeah.
was like, what?
Just
Yeah.
the rhyme words, and then we'll figure it
Uh-huh.
out. Yeah.
Hmm. And then of late, I don't do any of that because I wanted to get, like just say PTSD. I wanted to get just emotion, like tell a story. Don't worry about gymnastics so much. Moving forward, speaking of paper, I want to go back to the paper and the book on some of the songs just to get some of that feel back
Mhm.
into the music. Because right now it's just I come up with something like I write a fragment of it down in the phone, and then I try to learn like 4 or 8 bars and go from there freestyle. Like, what are you saying? Like, don't just sit there or whatever. Or if it deserves, research. You know, I'm researching the actual content and the actual what are you saying, and let's research what you're actually talking about right here. And I'll stop then. So when I say freestyle, I don't mean like go in the booth and just go off the top of my head on a song. I mean like I'm letting the words come out of here first, and then I rearrange them. And
Mhm.
then that's one step. And then I just do a ton of editing, like relentless editing, like a film. Like, you don't need this scene. You could do this over. You don't need
You
this
talking
scene.
about
You
like
don't need this
specific,
word.
like
Yeah.
certain, like you'll do that with like a certain phrase within a verse?
Phrase within a verse, um, you know, just everything. Like, and then when I think it's right, I'll lay it and I'll take it home and, listen to it like and critique it like I critique everything else. And most times I'm like, it's cool. You all right. You're okay. And you need to do it over again. Because I don't have those people in the studio with me anymore. So I need to be my own.
So now you gotta be the like, "You're
Yeah.
garbage, get out the
Mhm.
boat."
Yeah. And most
Ye
times I'm like, this is garbage. When I get to the point where I'm like, woo, I'm the greatest of all time. Oh my God. Like those are such enjoyable moments when you could do that to yourself. Yeah.
and I mean, you're known for that, like, other greats know that about you. Like, me and Brendan were just talking about the fact BK1 has a album, a producer album that he made that Tariq is on, that you were supposed to be on. And
Hmm.
BK said, "The minute I stopped trying to chase Pharaoh to get on this record is when I'm in the I'm in the studio with Tariq, and Tariq is playing the new Roots record. And he's like, this is a space that's supposed to be a Pharaoh verse. We'll see. Probably not."
Hmm.
Because everybody knows about you that
Hmm.
you're very hard on yourself, and that you don't let something go out into the world until you get that feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, and it could be I'm open to the flow, the pondering, the lock into pocket. Things don't have to be 100% like they used to be. Like I'll let things go, but I need time because I'm my own guy. That's like, yo, that's bullshit, man. I don't know about those last 8 bars. Be like, come on, son, you lazy right now. I need to do that to myself.
So when you write them, like when you write your lyrics, do you have any way of annotating either the rhythmic part? Because like sometimes there'll be very few bars in a joint. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot oppose. God has chose me to battle
Mm,
against all. Like
mm-mm,
that's not a lot of words, but the way
mm,
that they're swinging and the way that they're
mm,
spaced. Do
mm.
you have a way to annotate either, like write that into a page, either that or the melody of it?
It's melody. It's where the stretching of the word ends in the bar. Then it's listening back to it and deciding, does that sound conversational, or does it just sound like you have no idea where the fucking swing is and you've lost and you sound like an idiot? How do you think that's going to translate to people if you're not in pocket? And then sometimes, back in the day, you're intentionally off. Sometimes you're intentionally in. And, jazz drummers is or jazz timing. Sometimes it's like what feels good within these bars, and all these people have their own funk in the element, and this thing that's locked into a grid, a mental grid or a field grid. But the bass player is like, I'm with y'all. We're speaking. Everybody has an individual place to play. So I keep that in mind. That's why it's a little more difficult for me sometimes to critique it, because I take it back and I'm like, when I laid it, it's a verse that's coming out on a new record that when I did it, I was like, I want to sound conversational in the booth. And then when after a couple of days home, I'm like, does this shit sound like you don't understand what a pocket is? You know what I mean?
Mm.
So it's intentional depending on the song. If I'm expressing, certain things, um, you will now consider me the apocalyptic one. After this rhyme, henceforth there's none. I specifically was like, I want to come onto this song like I'm descending from the clouds and be that big. And the focus shouldn't be in the specifics. It should be in how this felt coming across, and that I intentionally was like, fuck a grid. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
this is what I'm trying to express, and do you feel it? And hit it a couple of times, and it's like that feels right. You know what I mean? Like,
And
so.
that's such a visual delivery. Like I'm talking about,
Mm,
like I'm sitting here thinking, like asking you, like,
mm,
is there a way that you annotate things like the rhythm or the notes? But that's something that's beyond rhythm and beyond notes. And now you're talking about, like what you're talking about, descending from heaven. So it's like saying words in a way that elicits a visual picture inside of a person. You know what I'm saying? So like
right.
you talking about like like a third dimension of rhyming. That's like it's the words that are being said, it's the timing, it's the all of this stuff. But then there's something that bends all of that, so it actually creates
Mm,
like a visual picture in an audio
mm,
art form.
mhm. And what's interesting about that too is like it is vibration, it is math, it is waveform, it is, you can use all these things. Uh, and just like spirituality is like in the moment, I'm realizing if I can reach someone with this vibration, they'll get it. Just like the word, just like the gospel, like it's there, but you might not be ready to receive that information. One person hears, you will now consider me the apocalyptic one after this rhyme, as and receives it as like, oh, this dude, he's speaking to me right now.
Mhm.
And then the next person is like, what's happening, bro? You're not paying attention to the you're never paying attention to the I've
Right.
realized that too. And it's, being comfortable enough as an MC after a point where it's just like, bro, this is where I am, and I, I'm confident in this space as well. That I hope reads true at this point. I'm hoping reads true at this point.
I was so like honored that you're on my record, man. And
Mm,
I've hung with a lot of great people. I feel like I hung
mm,
with Chuck. I feel like I hung with Scarface. I feel like I hung with Freeway and Wale and Jean Grey and like I've had a lot of bad people on record,
Mhm.
bad, but you and Fonte are the two that I'm like, yeah, they won. Like they, like it's just that's it.
Well, well, I mean, there's context to that too, because like you said, the way y'all did that record, it was like let's go in and let's not overthink this. Let's get these emotions out and these feelings out and get it done. Like we promise, let's promise ourselves to do that because as perfectionists, you know, you could get tied up into I could do this again, I could do this again, I could do this again. But that's why that album feels good.
Mhm.
It's subjective too, like what feels better, you know. I've relinquished all of that because I feel like everybody I've had featured on my stuff kicked my ass. But like Fonte said, like that's the reason you're asking them to be like you want the thing to kind of go up and tell people, at the end of the day, it shows people I made this choice for a reason. You see them smart enough to get who I got, and in the end, the fan benefits. So technically, you know, that that is what is supposed to happen, or it's supposed to match, or if you choose that person to go first, I always ask, what am I doing? Because if I think you're gonna lead the record, then my job is to lure the listener's ears in for the beginning, get on bass, bunt, do whatever it takes, get you to listen, make the song attractive, and then whoever's last has to take it home. I
Mhm.
think fans listen to the last guy always like they're taking it home, but I don't listen like that. It's like, everybody's playing a role in this. Sometimes verses affect you more when you hear features and collaborations. But yeah, like I'm just here to do my job. I was telling the same thing to Buster. We did a song with Crisis, and we were on the phone. And I was like, whatever y'all need, you know, it's a role that has to be played. And Buster was like, man, fuck you. I'm not letting you kick my ass. I was
Yeah,
just,
man. Buster's the
whatever,
Buster's
bro.
like gotta be
Whatever,
the
bro.
winner, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Crazy. Travelers Podcast has been sponsored from day one by the Zakat Foundation, ZAKAT. Is how Muslims give back. It's an obligation for every Muslim that makes more money than they and their dependents need to live. So if a Muslim has more money than they need to live for a year, that's kind of the marking point for zakat specifically. Like if I have just the basics, not like how many vacations can I go on, how much new jewelry can I buy, but if I'm sitting on enough money to just house, clothe, and feed me and my dependents for 1 year, then everything over and above that, a portion of it is just due to people who don't have that. And there are so many ways to do it. Zakat Foundation, there's so many global charities that do really good work around the world, but a lot of them are really based on corporate practices. They're based on these kind of like huge NGO type of frameworks. And one of the things that I love so much about Zakat Foundation is that they're looking to get out of that mode and they look to think outside the box. So often when people go in these huge kind of like super capitalist kind of corporate NGO, humanitarian groups go in, they go into other parts of the world with very amazing intentions, but a lot of times they don't know what's going on and they end up making a mess. They throw a bunch of money at stuff. They want to take pictures. They want to raise more money with these pictures they're taking, and they end up actually making things worse. So Zakat Foundation partners with people on the ground. It's a Muslim-led organization, but they don't only help Muslims. They sometimes have helped people who have oppressed Muslims. But it's like these are human beings that are experiencing need. And so we're here. This is part of our mission. Also, they're very creative. Zakat Foundation over and over and over consistently thinks outside the box to do things in ways that are really dope. And so they've been rocking with the Travelers podcast from the very beginning. And only a small percentage of the guests on this show have been Muslim, but they understand the need for culture and how important it is to bring together people of good intention and of goodwill, people uniting and bonding based on our common humanity. So they've supported this show from the very beginning. We're very honored to be rocking with them. Head to Zakat US on social media, follow all the stuff they're doing. Go to their website, zakatfoundation.org, ZAKAT, and find a way that you can kick something in. $5, give somebody a hot meal. $50 a month sponsors an orphan, and every single penny of that $50 goes directly to the orphan. Like none of it goes to paying people salaries, or none of that is going to the Travelers podcast, for example. So check them out and know that you're supporting an organization that actually partners with people, that goes in based on people's shared humanity, that's honored to serve, that doesn't have this top down approach, that thinks outside the box, and somebody that you can trust. Very grateful to be partnered with Zakat Foundation. This episode of the Travelers Podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and we get a commission every time you use our link to sign up with them. BetterHelp is an online therapy platform, and if you listen to this show, you know that we're major proponents of mental health and therapy on this program. And I just believe that everybody deserves to have access to it. It's not even a thing of like, you need to be in therapy because you got to get your stuff together and you're a toxic person and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that the human vessel needs care the same way that our bodies need care, the same way that our car needs care, the same way our computers and our phones need care. There's a genius bar for a reason. Therapy is one of the genius bars for the psyche. And what's so important about it is that we live our lives and we build these like systems, these protective kind of force fields that we feel like we need. And a lot of times we do need them in the moment to make it through some trauma we're experiencing, or to push through some difficult time in life. Or maybe there are times where we don't have the opportunity to stop and to reflect and to process and to think about what's going on. Sometimes, we have all different types of challenges. There's all different levels of challenges. The fact that my trauma might not be as bad as somebody else's doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve to be looked at and to be looked after and cared for. All of us deserve access to therapy. That's what I believe. And I, for example, live in Istanbul, Turkey. So the fact that my wife is a therapist and knows a bunch of therapists doesn't really help me, because they're licensed in their particular organization or their practice to treat people that are in their state. And I'm not. I'm in Üsküdar, Istanbul, Turkey, on the Asian continent, halfway around the world. And there's not a lot of English speaking therapists here for me. So I'm one of the many people that was having really serious barriers to mental health therapy. And so I heard about BetterHelp on a podcast. I went and I checked it out. It starts with this. You go to betterhelp.com/travelers. That lets them know that we recommended them to you and that we made that connection. They give you a discount, and then they also give us something as well for having made this connection and getting the word out about their service. And you start with a questionnaire. They ask you things about your life. What is it that's bringing you to therapy? What is it that you think you might want to work on? And you can start with anything from chemical dependency, substance abuse, trauma, anger issues, depression, anxiety. I mean, like pick what's the particular thing that you're experiencing today, because most of us have experienced some cocktail of all of this stuff throughout our lives. But you let them know, and then also if there's certain preferences you might have about who you might want to talk to as a therapist. If you want to talk to a man, if you want to talk to a woman, if you want to talk to people that, a therapist of color, they have all these different, it's a big network of people. And so if you head to betterhelp.com/travelers, get signed up. The other thing is that you start communicating with your therapist right away. You choose if you want to turn the camera on and see them, like a Skype call, like a FaceTime call. You can do that, like a Zoom type of thing. It's all on their platform. It's completely confidential. Or you could just talk on the phone. That's what I usually do. I'm partially blind, so I don't like having to like look in the screen. I like to just be able to talk. You can also text and send voice notes to your therapist, and you can start talking to them right away. The other thing is that if you start talking to somebody and you're like, I don't really feel comfortable, I just don't feel like I can open up and be myself. I just don't feel like this is a good fit. No questions asked. There's a button right there, change therapist. And you start looking through different therapists. You see a photo, what their background is, what their specialties are, what their philosophy is, what their approach is. You get a sense of this person's vibe. I started doing therapy through BetterHelp, and immediately, this first conversation, I just started to have a different way of thinking about the stories that I had told myself all my life about who I am and how I got this way. And so some of the patterns that I've experienced in relationships and just different situations I've had in my life, my therapist has been incredibly helpful to me. And so I'm very grateful, and that's why I'm happy to share it. So go to BetterHelp, BETTER help, HELP.com/travelers. Sign up, start your therapy journey, and let them know that we sent you. So the so you have these joints that like I said, that you're literally rhyming from. I mean, you famously have the joint where you're rhyming from the perspective of a bullet, which is an inanimate object, you know what I mean, that
Mm,
plays such a major role in all of our lives, like,
mm,
especially those of us that come from situations where we've lost friends, like our friends have been
mhm,
shot and killed. You have a joint where you rhyme from the perspective of a man who got fired. Times Square is one of my favorite joints of yours, and
mm.
PTSD is my favorite of a complete body of work from you. That's my favorite one.
That's crazy. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's huge because um, I agreed to take chances with
Mhm.
myself and was like, you're gonna have to agree to take chances on this record in terms of tempo. You know, if you're gonna rap about depression, it needs to feel like that even before you get on the song. So for me, it just when I was going through, time just moved so slow and labored and heavy. And, even like you said, from the intro of the show, from the intro of the album, for you to start that way in hip hop is risk taking because traditionally you start off like, let me show you and remind you why.
Yeah, I'm nice. Here's the story of me and my career, and this is how ill I can rhyme. And yeah,
hmm So I was like, you know, you got to forego all that pretentiousness and lock into what these things feel like and what does it feel like and ask yourself these questions. And then now I'm examining what my emotions were during that period. So I was like, this album has to reflect that. So I wasn't sure how it would be received on that side. Uh, so that's just a blessing to hear you say that and means a lot.
well, I mean, there are classics, there are like undeniable classic songs on all of the other, and I love all the records, but there are so many classic joints. But in terms of like an overall body of work, I don't know that we've ever seen one of the true great lyricists. And I mean, the other names that would be in the same conversation with yours. I can't. I struggle to think of any of our greats being vulnerable in that specific way, especially that like this conversation around mental health and therapy and things like that has become more and more popular. Like it's like really gaining momentum.
hmm
But this is a good like 8 years before that was even a conversation at all.
hmm hmm
For you to, you know, really talk so openly about the struggles that you had. It sounds like I've heard you talk about like depression related to certain medication that you were taking at a certain time.
hmm
Um, but so like you have these joints, like the first one on there, that's a story of a real man that lost his job and went back to Times Square and shot it up.
hmm
And so you rhyme from his perspective. And you
hmm
also, on the new record, you rhyme from the perspective of a racist.
hmm
And the like deep spiritual human empathy that you bring to all of those, because you're not doing those in ways that demoralize those people. You're not dehumanizing those people. Even
mhm,
the bullet, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're
mhm,
basically saying, like, okay, what I take from that is like, okay, this bullet may have struck somebody you love. It might have struck John F. Kennedy. It might have struck, but this bullet isn't making decisions for itself. This bullet makes
mhm,
no decisions. It just does its job.
mhm.
So spiritually, when you're writing something like that, where does your heart have to go to identify in such like with a racist, or to identify with someone who loses their mind, loses their job and loses their mind and shoots up a bunch of people? Like, what do you have to live through in order to produce that?
It's heavy, man. Like, just touching back on PTSD, I had to decide, you know, what's compartmentalized that's gonna be that box needs to be opened up, and talking about it's emotional, talking about it was also therapeutic, again, to speak about it, talk about it, revisit those things. Um, but you gotta dig, if you're talking about all the things we talked about lyrically earlier, to speak in a tone that sounds like that wasn't easy, because if you're rapping about something that's depressing, like you're not in this higher positive projective, my mouth is open, I'm smiling frequency is like, you're literally curled in a session, you're not kind of broad. So you're embodying those feelings again. Same thing with, the racist song. It's like it's it's insane, and you're even giving me more info. Like, even when you personify and get into the personification of these different people, they're all different types of those people and nuances. And for the last song on the 13 album, Races, it took me a while to be like, what is this voice? Is he
Mhm.
angry? Is he creepy? We tried different microphones. Finally, we got like just a podcast mic, a mic that I could get really close up on, and so that you can hear my lisp and
Yes,
you know, and my lips parting, because I wanted it to feel like, oh, this dude is fucking, get away from me, like
it's nasty.
you're too close,
It's
nasty,
supposed to be
like
nasty. Yeah, this is
right,
gross.
yeah. And I finally got the mic, went to leave, and I was like, this is it. He suggested a mic because I was telling him, like, sometimes with the U87s and the higher end mics, I'm not getting the mistakes and the crispiness that this guy should have. So we recorded at his house right there, sitting in a chair, and I was able to get those little nuances that I wanted you to feel about this character. But just like acting, it it takes a while to wash that shit off, and then performing the song is a whole other thing. I was like, yo, why don't we try this since we're a band and we can stop and pause any pick up anywhere? And we drop the last verse and I do it as a cappella, and they're like hitting at certain points, and I'm like, this is giving me chills, like,
Yeah,
um um to start a cappella and just be like, the melody is Palestinian and the snares is spit.
that's right.
Uh,
Yeah,
and then to be
that's
able to
right.
have awkward silence before I rhyme again, as well as before the song I say, as I transform into this character, this personification, as I go there with everything that's going on in this country, if you can relate to what I'm saying and it resonates with you in a particular type of way, then kind of like fuck you, because it shouldn't. Or, when we get the verbiage, I throw it on the crowd to watch the performance in a certain way. And everybody was kind of like, oh shit. And there were things you could tell people wanted to respond to, but were kind of like, I don't know if I should be like, woo, or how would that read? And it's just a different energy that we're still
Right.
perfecting because the band's only did with 5 shows so far, and we're just like so hungry to perform and perfect these things. And I think as we grow, people are gonna love the old work now as we go into the new work that we're working on.
I mean, that one particular is like particularly like you said, like what's going on in this country. The day that that white man shot up the grocery store in Buffalo.
Hmm.
I was with a group of people from Buffalo, some like amazing artists, and we were performing together and working together. And I went back that night, and I kept like that song was just stuck in my head.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I started to listen to it, and I was like, I can't. Like it's too like real. Like
Hmm.
this isn't just an idea. Like this is a
It's a hard
very
song. Yeah.
but there's something about the fact that the you did the like the Daniel Day-Lewis method acting, like to embody this person in a way that it feels to me like both humanizes them because of the fact that you like we're hearing you step into that
Hmm.
role, but
Hmm.
then also exposing just how gross, like what you're saying about the your mouth. It's like this is disgusting, man.
Hmm.
But then also how scared, how like angry, how petty, how one of the ways that Malcolm was able to convert so many people to the Nation of Islam, he was like, it wasn't that hard. I just had to describe the evils of slavery to them. I didn't even have to really sell them on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's like I could just talk so much about what slavery was really like, and people would
Hmm.
be like,
Hmm.
word,
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
confirming all of these like ghost feelings that I've inherited from the last several hundred years. And there's something about like your willingness. It feels like a real deeply humanizing thing, but also like a really deep generosity for
Hmm.
you to take on that type of thing. And then when the album comes to a close, I'm like, this is a magnificent day for an exorcism. Like,
Hmm.
how do you what do you do to clear, like, how do you sage your spirit after something like that?
Yeah. We talked about that throughout the whole process, and I discussed it with myself in terms of like this can't end this way. It has to end with me. At the time we were doing it, we were so set on touring, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, "There's a way to bring bring the vibration back up live. There's a way to bring the vibration back up in this on the album." I didn't want to bring it up like a Hollywood film and have some type of false resolve or ending. I wanted it to still feel a little bit uncomfortable. Um, just going back, like I, uh, I give a lot of credit to Dave Chappelle to, and I'm still uncovering things about the song and how to utilize the song and how to make it art. Going down to Yellow Springs to his place, and he loves the song. He played it like 8 times in a row, and I'm
Mhm.
I'm saying like this is weird because if you're driving in your car, like you said, it's such a vibration. It's not, you don't drive around to that song, or you don't play it when you're taking a bath. When you wake, it's such a song that's just like. And I don't want people to think I'm unaware of vibration. So
Mhm.
as I'm finishing the album, I'm like, this is crazy. You just don't drive and be like, let me bump the album. It's not that type of thing. That song in particular. So,
Mhm.
but what he told me was the value. I'm amazed by the value of this song because I see it on so many levels. And this feels like a one man play. This song feels like has so much room to be seen in so many ways. So now I want to see from you, what is this visual going to look like? What is this live performance going to look like? You can make it so wrong that you get canceled, and people be like, you cannot perform this song, and then you can develop a way to get it to the people. You could do a visual where people are like, I gotta go see this show to see how they perform this song, based on these things. So he just threw a whole bunch of elements into the creative side, which I knew was there, but he's such a genius
Yeah.
in how he's able to articulate things.
Man, artists really need each other. Like human beings need each other. Like it's very like just difficult being a human being. And so we need each other to like help make it through, whether it's like therapy or a spiritual practice or just people sharing like really being real with each other.
Mm,
But man, artists really need each other. And like me and you have done like like there's been times that I've hit you and I'm just like, hey man, I need an artist therapy session.
mhm,
And it's really good. I don't know if there's anyone better at that than Dave. And that's one of the things that I don't think that, they say that like for a tree, all of these amazing branches you see in the sky,
mm,
the reality is that under the ground, the roots are doing that same thing.
mhm,
You know what I mean? And I
yeah,
think what that is with Dave is like for all of the amazing things that he's done, and people have their feelings about the last few things that he's done, and I respect those feelings. And Dave has not asked anybody to speak for him or
mhm,
defend him or anything. Just let it be what it is. But I think the part that people don't that not everybody gets to see about him is the way that he's able to encourage, understand, validate artists and like what it is that we're experiencing. And I don't think anybody articulates it the way that he does. And that thing that he was doing in Yellow Springs was like everybody that came through there is like, man, he really is almost like a big brother or almost like a father to so many people, even
mhm,
people that he came up with that are his friends. Like it's
mhm,
obvious that
mhm,
it just enters spiritually the way that he's feeding um artists. And it does not matter to him how big or small you are.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like it like literally it could be like Justin Bieber and me in the
mhm,
same room and it's like we're all artists here.
mhm,
You know what I'm saying? To him, like there's no like where you are in terms of your fame or success is not what we're talking about at this moment.
yeah. I was on the phone with Black Thought, and we were talking the same thing. And he said a simple, short sentence, and he said, "All we got is each other. Like all we got is us." And it just hit me in
Mhm.
the heart again, like yourself and the brilliant artists that I call friends, and I just was emotional about it because it's a beautiful thing to grow in this industry and the elder statesmanship and to realize getting emotional, like you could really call somebody and be like, yo man, like I need you on this song. Like, yo man, like I'm going through this. Like it's just a beautiful thing to know that Brother Ali and Thought is a phone call away, and you can reach out and get some real poignant, heartfelt information and consoling. That's what we need to be like. We need each other, you know.
And just knowing that you're not alone is
Hmm.
enough. You don't even need an answer. It's not like somebody's going to give you the answer.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But just that somebody is like, yeah,
Hmm.
you're not crazy. Like what you're feeling, I
Hmm.
feel that too.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with you. And just yes, just
Hmm.
validation
Hmm.
on that level
Yeah.
that like what you're experiencing, that's what we experience. I remember, there was somebody that I was one of their favorite artists and I knew that when they were coming up and then a lot of what they did was based on me and they ended up winning Grammys and things like that.
Hmm.
And I just had a feeling about it. I'm like, man, I could talk for hours about all of the connections between me and this artist and stuff.
Hmm.
And I was just feeling so low about it, and I happened to be with Chuck D, and Chuck knew exactly the right thing to say to me.
Hmm.
He was just like, "Hey, man, congratulations. A white boy stole your shit and won a Grammy and never mentioned you. It's the blackest thing about you. You're welcome. Welcome to the family." And it's just like, man, the ability to, like, validate what I was experiencing
Hmm.
and also make me laugh and make me feel, it's really like, man, what the artists
Yeah.
do for the world and what we do for each other,
It's a lesson.
it's just
It's
an honor.
so many lessons in that. An elder statesman like that has seen more than we have seen. So it's your job innately. like earthwise to reach back in that way and be that voice. Like what else are we doing right now as grown ass men if we're not just striving to be great and striving to give back? You know, what's the purpose?
Is it okay to talk about Paul C?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to shout out Dave again because on a racist joint
Mm,
when I met him,
mhm.
when I was there, I should say, I was like, I almost wasn't going to do this song because I had it locked, and then he put out unapologetic, and I was just like, you know, the things he was saying in that was so raw and offensive. I was like, that's how I wanted the vibe to this song to be, and he just was like, no, 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 this is different, you know. So that was some cool
Man,
moments. Yeah.
Dave has the ability more than any other public figure. It used to be Muhammad Ali and now it's Dave Chappelle.
Hmm.
But like the amount of times that I cry uncontrollably related to him,
Hmm.
like when he says, man, in that joint, when he says they accuse me of smoking crack, like I know what that did to him.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Just the fact that he would say to to the industry, like, "Man, I have danced through lasers my entire life to tell the truth
Hmm.
in a way that," like you think about all of his jokes about race, gun store, liquor store. Where are you taking me?
Hmm.
Without saying like, "I want that purple stuff." He's
Hmm.
not like giving a lecture about food
Right.
deserts, but like he's learned how to dance through lasers to tell all of the truth that he wants to expose
Hmm.
in a way that makes even the most like don't care about anybody white dudes laugh and consider and think. And like for him to go through all of that and then somebody dangles some money in front of him and he walks away from it and they accuse him of smoking crack. I mean, some people say that's why he got buff.
Hmm.
That he's like, man, I'm gonna get big and strong so that these people are saying
Right.
I'm smoking crack.
Right.
You know what I mean? And when he says they accused me of smoking crack, he was like, I didn't even drink beer at that time because I was a devout Muslim.
Hmm. Yeah, that's deep.
And he says, I do now because you ruined my fucking life. It's like hilarious. And it's also like,
Yeah,
man,
it's rough. Yeah.
and that's why I say like that particular struggle is like, I know a lot of them. I'm saying like Jay-Z shouted you out on his first record, Crime Organized, like the Pharaoh.
Hmm.
Like we thought that was about you and Poe.
Hmm.
And then Kevin Beacham, the great hip hop historian from Chicago,
Hmm.
asked him back in those days, was like, you talking about organized confusion, Pharaoh Monch. He's like, yeah, Pharaoh's the best. And then I mean Eminem gave it to you like really on Rap God, and I mean, that's one of the things about Eminem is like you can see that there are people that are learning from history, like Eminem as a person that really is exposed to the culture, obviously grew in the culture.
Hmm.
Like, man, they gave him his first Grammy and he stood up there and read a list. He's like, I know that white America thinks I'm the first person to ever do this like syllable rap
Hmm.
thing. So let me read a list of all these names.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Cool G Rap. And like
Hmm.
in Rap God, he shouted out Lakim Shabazz. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It
And
is it
then
is
also
that
the
it is that deep, you know, like Lakim Shabazz did a lot for me in those songs and his tone, like it is like a family of a Marvel universe. Like, you know, I took, from Lakim Shabazz, like um I take from Eminem. Like that is our duty to elevate the art form. That was the beginning of it. It's like I'll just use me, Prince, and OC. We get together, and O would be like, "I wrote something new. I want to see what y'all think." And I would be sitting there like, "I need to rethink my life, get it together, and come back to the table and be like, I wrote something new. I want to see what y'all think." That's the whole thing. I mean, that's how I came up in it, like pulling from everywhere you could possibly pull from to write. And I mean, that takes us back to Paul C. You know,
Yeah, please.
yeah.
To me, Paul C, like I'll tell you, like I have these observations of my friends. Part of why I love doing this podcast is because, like people like yourself that I know and love, and that that I'm a fan before I met you, and then we become brothers. And but I have these observations that in a regular friendship you don't really get the opportunity to say, this is the way that I understand this thing about you.
Mm.
And in this format, like, it gives me the opportunity to do that. So I'm interested to hear if you could share about Paul C, and then because there's an observation that I have that I want to see what you think about it.
I mean, it's just a bunch of elements. He was a friend. He became a friend, which was the most impactful. He understood the things about being a creative that we just didn't know yet. You know what I'm saying? Like in between working so hard on music, he understood processes about having fun. We would go to the movies, we would get popcorn, we would do other stuff. And the process of coming back there and then putting your all into something.
So I mean, for people that don't know Paul C, so like you're from Jamaica, Queens, which is like where many of the greatest rappers of all time come from.
Hmm.
So Paul C is a little older than you.
Hmm.
And was he the first person that was legitimately in the game that you really had access to and worked with like that?
Yeah. Aside from like all the musicians that were from Queens, and going to those studios and seeing those cats early on, like Donald Blackman and Kevin Osborne and uh, all of the Queens uh, musicians from that Jamaica funk era of music.
Dope. Crazy.
There was a studio called 1212 that was on Jamaica Avenue that everybody used to go to. We were coming off of an independent situation, just like recording situation, and me and Prince Paul were finally working on the demo that we had practiced so hard to work on, and finally we were like, we're getting our voices in, we want to do this. And so we went to this famous studio to work on our demo. And Paul C, we weren't working with him, came into the room to get some cords and some wires, and he literally didn't pay us no attention. He just got some wires and some cords, and he was like, sorry, pardon me, my bad, and he walked out.
Because he's working with like Super Lever
Yes.
C, Almighty
Yes.
RSO. I
Yeah.
heard an interview with him where he was saying that LL bit, he was like, feel like LL bit some of his style. Like he was in the game, he was
Hmm.
doing it. It's a white guy.
Yeah, Paul was white. And the next day, I don't know how, he must have asked the other engineer. He got our phone number, my phone number, and called and was like, yo, this is Paul C from 1212. And that was the first time. It's been a couple of times I had a reactional to a phone call, asthma reaction. And I'm like, Paul C? He's like, yeah, Paul C. I'm like, oh shit. He was like, yo, I heard y'all stuff, coming in and out of the room. Y'all are dope, man. I would like to work with y'all. And it was just like the heavens opened up, man. There is a God, you know what I mean? Like, we wanted to work with him. And like, in this time, who's iller than Ultramagnetic and Super Lover C?
Mhm.
They're on the radio. Kool Keith is Kool Keith. Like, it's just like,
Right.
man, we're gonna have a chance to work with this dude. Around this time, I'm promising my parents that we could get a professional contract. My parents is like, you got 365 days to make this a legitimate thing, or go off to college. And Paul C's phone call was like the yes, we could do this. We're on our way to becoming professional. And so when we went to work with him, it was just like this. I'm literally like, I paused this beat up. This is what we were gonna rap to, the demo, "Funky for You," and all the stuff that's on our original demo. And that's the level we were. We didn't have any equipment. We were just going to the studio to do it, but we had pause tapes. And so when we did it, got with him, he made some of the beats and took some of the ideas and hooked them up in the SP, and we went to record. He was the first one to tell me, and we were getting a little reputation. he was the first one to tell me, you know, these are too many bars. There's no song structure. I'm an MC. Like I'm that guy who's like, what? Too many bars? Like, what do you mean? Like we're at that stage, and
There's
he's
never too many bars.
right.
Impossible.
Go home, and study and count. And who's your favorite? What's your favorite album? Takes a Nation of Millions, whatever. He was like, go listen to that album and listen to where Chuck starts and stops and count. And, you got to arrange these records. And he was the first one to kind of like, I was starting to be like, I'm Pharoahe Monch. Like, and that was the first time somebody was like, go study. I'm like, so we did and came back and got it together, and the demo was done, and the demo got to Bobito at Def Jams and all of that. But to have us know that he was gonna produce our whole album, Def Jams was digging they wasn't at first, but then we spoke to Russell and we just had offers from this demo, and then his death was tragic in that he was murdered. It was
Mhm.
probably the first point in my life where that trauma, I just didn't know how to process it. You get a phone call from a detective. We didn't have cell phones. I'm home, my parents, and it's like, this is Detective such and such. You were on Pulse's answering machine, the last call. And so, do you know? And I'm like, so what? This is how I'm finding out. He was killed. He was murdered last night. And it's just like, shock response. Like, I don't know. Like, what are you saying? Like, I can't accept that. That was my first experience with somebody I know and love being murdered. And it's hard to talk about because I definitely just shut down. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I,
Mhm.
I shut down for so many reasons, from a friend perspective and a why perspective, and like, God, why would you take away our chance to do this? Why would you take away my friend? Like, I don't know. I don't understand what's happening right now. And that was the first time, you know, amongst many of the organized confusion adversity in which what we're about to be in Source magazine for rhymes on a demo. And we're just like, what did we do now? Like, we don't know how to produce. Like, it's over. Your dream is over. So it's hard meeting large professors, understanding that the tutelage was there, and what became of that is just his importance to hip hop is unsung, and his attention to truncation and programming with what he had at his disposal. He was also a drummer, which now, I look back and I'm just like, this is why he had the mind to be like, these drums could have swing and feel a certain way because they're stiff the way they're being programmed up to this up to this point. And I just feel he's responsible for a lot of the trajectory, especially coming out of Queens, that hip hop took. It's a tough, but it's therapeutic to talk about it.
And didn't the detective start accusing and suspecting the artist that he was working with? Like I
Yeah,
feel like I heard a story about Poe went to his crib and they treated him like a suspect
yeah,
and
yeah. It was wild for young men to experience that. And I mean, in the hood at the time,
Mhm.
we're from Southside. We get it. You get it. You know what I mean? Like, it is an era of people getting shot, and you're like, they should have ran. You should have peeped the whole situation at the park jam. I hit the hole in the gate and was out, so I didn't get the weight
Right.
of it. But as you understand therapy and psychology a little more, it's just like, you're not supposed. It's not normal to.
That's right.
process and just hold on to and accept the level of mentality dealing with the violence that we had to deal
Yeah.
with back then. And so as young men, and it just kept going to the point where it's so much you're like, people get shot, man, what are you going to do? Just don't get shot. Then it's like,
Right.
what? Like, you sound crazy.
And it's like there's parts of you that's like trying to reconcile that, you know, and then also needing to move on. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
but I got this thing happening and I got people that need me and I have
Hmm.
to still,
Hmm.
and so certain parts of you start to close down. And that's what I'm saying. Like, not only the racist song or not only the song about the guy losing it on like I think about, the Times Square song.
Hmm.
And it's like, this is a person that you're relating to who had a 9 to 5 job, who might have thought like, man, I wish I could be a rapper instead,
Hmm.
but like you lose your job and one day you're providing for your family, everything is good. The next day you're just not, and nobody's giving you an explanation. You felt like you helped build the company, whatever. And these are the same types of things that we experience. Like we're experiencing something very similar, or like hearing you rhyme from the perspective of a bullet. It just has a whole other meaning
Hmm.
when people that you love have been killed in
Yeah,
that way.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's tragic, and you know, I think we are finally getting to the point where we're dealing with our trauma in a more informed and educated way.
So when you do those things on a record though, and you open up that space in yourself to allow yourself to sit in that stuff, because one of the things they do, like I'm in therapy, and one of the things they do with trauma is like they bring you to your traumatic moments once you trust your therapist, and they invite you to like the outskirts of your trauma to go back there in your mind for a second. But now you're seeing yourself. Well, I was 14 when that happened, but now I'm 45 years old. And so I can like look at myself and what does that kid look like that's experiencing that? What do you want to say to him?
Mhm.
And they just bring you there for a second and then they bring you back out.
Mhm.
And it's like we're gonna just do this in little pieces that you can live through a little exposure, and
Mhm.
then we increase it, we go a little deeper, we go a little deeper. But that's what this music does.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that's what, so for you talking about like what it's like for you to be in those moments, or even the way that you're able to empathize with people in those moments, it gives you as a right, but then also the rest of us listening to the music, it gives us an opportunity to sit in that type of environment without it feeling dangerous. Like it's therapeutic for the listener as well, you know?
Exactly. That's a insane, amazing perspective. But that's what I'm hoping to do. Like, I'm a would be director and movie producer in my mind, and I'm hoping to give you like 3 minutes of a film that you could watch again and experience it, that level of pain or joy, without actually having to experience it, like you said. And I think highly of that. So it takes me time to edit these films and produce them and get them right to go into the theaters.
Yeah, it's not like yeah, there's certain directors knock out a movie every year.
Hmm.
And then there's other ones that's like, man, you might get one of these joints every 10 years.
Hmm. Hmm.
Really happy and honored and grateful to be brought to you this week by EMAN, the Inner City Muslim Action Network, which is my favorite grassroots real organization in America. EMAN was started by Dr. Rami Neshashibi, who is a Palestinian American brother who grew up on the south side of Chicago and continues to live there with his amazing family, his incredible kids, and his amazing wife. Iman operates on the south side of Chicago and also in Atlanta, but they do stuff all over the country and around the world. Iman is based on the idea that their work as the Inner City Muslim Action Network should be spiritually grounded, that the work should be culturally relevant and should be socially aware. And they bring together people that have all of these amazing gifts, much like the Travelers podcast. It's a very similar ethos. We come from the same approach, that the spiritual masters and practitioners and the artists and the thought leaders and the activists and the organizers and the educators and the aunties and the grandparents and the children and the spokespeople and the critics and the dancers and the all of these people need each other, that we're in the same work. The academics are not separate from the artists, and they're not separate from the spiritual masters. All of us are in this work together. All of us share this common vision that a human being is priceless and that a human being should be treated with respect, and that working together we are stronger as long as we're spiritually rooted, as long as we're culturally relevant, as long as we're socially conscious, that our connections are actually stronger than any force that exists in the world. And we've seen this over and over and over on the south side of Chicago and in Atlanta, some of the cities that are the most challenged by systems of generational poverty and violence and drug infestation, all of this stuff. And you see Iman do these amazing projects all over the world, bringing these different people together for healing spaces, bringing people together for cultural events, bringing people together to do incredible work that really actually impacts lives. One of the things I've seen at Iman that I just love is their green reentry program, where when folks come home from being incarcerated, they're automatically ushered into a space where they can learn carpentry, learn plumbing, learn electricity, learn roofing, and they do it all in a way that's environmentally sound. That's why they call it the green reentry. Also, green is symbolic of the religion of Islam and of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and our love for nature. Um, but just they're ushered into this situation where folks are trained and then train one another in these trades so that they can become tradespeople, so that they can become contractors, so that they can create their own businesses. But Iman has taken over entire city blocks on the south side of Chicago. It's this neighborhood that's famous for all of this bad news. And they together rehab homes, and then the people in the program can buy the homes. And so you have city blocks of homes that have been renovated by the people that are living there that are formerly incarcerated, that society threw away, and now they become part of the solution, part of the healing. And I've seen this over and over and over again with these pillars and these mountains of individuals. Anybody that's done prison work like I have, or just had people go away to prison, you know that there are beautiful people in there. And sometimes what led them there is their willingness to take risks to try to make things happen. You know what I'm saying? And because of lack of access to healthy and quote unquote legit ways to do that, sometimes people end up incarcerated. But these aren't horrible human beings. They're not monsters. Like, these are people that were trying to make something happen for themselves, for their families, for their communities. And so you just see that reality come to life. It's like, we all know the story of people like Malcolm X that went into prison and got the opportunity to learn and to grow. This is like an entire community of Malcolm X's, and not every single one is a spokesperson, but Iman is celebrating their 25th year. And I also personally, a lot of the things, if you enjoy my art, if you enjoy this podcast, so much of this worldview that I have has been encouraged and fostered and developed and assisted and aided and inspired by Iman. My album is 10 years old now, called Morning in America, Dreaming in Color. And there's a photograph on the front taken by the great Jonathan Mannion, really well-known hip-hop photographer. He's actually took this photo of me making the salat, the Muslim prayer, on the American flag. And all of those are ideas that came to me when I was at artist retreat in Iman, because they told me, draw a picture of yourself that represents all of your different identities. And so, I put them in different orders. So it was like me as a Muslim, me as an MC, me as and then, and I said, and I also am I am part of America for better and for worse, and so I put that flag down there with me making salad and doing the prayer and all this stuff. Also, the name, I was talking it out, with this group of artists, with Amir Suleiman and Maimouna Youssef and all these incredible Kadir Latif and Drea Denur and all these people that were sitting there talking this stuff through. And I'm like, I don't know if my thing should be mourning in America because of how dark things are, or dreaming in color because of this hope that I have. And I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, why not both? I said, all right, cool. So I got the name of my album. You know what I'm saying? Head to Iman Central on social media and follow their work. Find ways to contribute, find ways to get down with that. I just can't say enough about Iman. We're so very grateful to be partnered with them, associated with them, sponsored by them, and helping them to celebrate 25 years of incredible work in the community. I've been an independent artist for over 20 years, and this podcast is independent, all the things that we do. It's really important that we are able to maintain the freedom and autonomy to say what we want, to focus on what we want, to be able to work with the people and have the guests that we really believe in and are happy to bring to you. And so much of that is based on the fact that we're not beholden to any big corporations. What comes along with that, though, is that we don't have the marketing budget to put everything in front of people's face all the time. Even if you follow me on social media, you're probably not going to see the majority of the stuff that we post because blah, 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 algorithm, whatever. The truth is that unless we spend $1,000 on all of our posts, then the 500,000 people that follow us on social media just aren't even going to see what we're doing. So, in order for us to be independent and to be able to connect directly with you, we're asking you to go to the website, brotherali.com. When you get there, there's my bio and all the sorts of information about the stuff I've done. All my whole catalog is there. You can read write-ups about all the projects that I've released over the years. You can see video clips and interviews and all that stuff. But the two things I want you to focus on for this one. Oh, also all of our merch is there. Our tour dates are there. I'm headed out right now on the East Coast leg of the Travelers Tour. Those shows are doing really well. A few of the shows have already sold out. So if you go to brotherali.com/events, you'll see all of that. If you go to our merch store, you'll see all of the merchandise that we have. But the two main things that I want you to know about are, number one, if you go to brotherali.com, you'll be prompted to sign the mailing list. Do that, because I don't sell your information. I don't spam you. I send only a handful of emails every year. And it's only when there are things that I'm really excited about that I want to make sure you know about. So tour dates and new releases, new podcast episodes, things like that. I really want to make sure that I'm able to connect with you directly. So hit that mailing list. Also, if you go to the section called Join, we have a caravan there where people can choose to support this podcast, support the work that we do at Travelers Media, learning series, and all sorts of things that we do. You can support all that stuff and also connect with me and with us in really unique ways. It's something very similar to a Patreon, but it's a different platform that we use that suits our needs better. But head to brotherali.com and go to the section called Join. Check out the different tiers, the different ways to connect. I do an Ask Me Anything episode where people really grill me. People ask me really serious questions. You know what I'm saying? You speak truth to power. What does it mean to you that you're building your career based on from stolen land in America? People ask me questions about all sorts of things that I've said and done over the years, and there's some really enlightening stuff that happens in there. The top tier of the caravan is called the Trailblazers, and in that one, we actually have a Slack channel where we've got a community of people that are bonding and sharing life together, and we record voice notes for each other. We do monthly Zoom calls where we hang out literally for hours. Like we literally will spend a Saturday or a Sunday together. And we got all these people from different walks of life that wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for this particular opportunity. So go to brotherali.com, sign the mailing list, get down with the caravan, and thank you for your support. Being your fan and then becoming your friend, the struggle is always like with the people that we love the most, like, how come the world doesn't see them the way that we see them?
Mm,
So the things that people, I mean, I have nothing but respect for Eminem. The things that most people say about Eminem, I'm like, that's dope. I wish these people knew Pharaoh, because so much of what they're saying
mhm,
to me is just
mhm,
it resonates with me much more. And but so many of our greats never do that. Like they never actually produce that thing that can be experienced by the masses,
mhm,
but you have.
mhm,
You did learn how to do that, and you've done that successfully. And when I think about Paul C being the guy that's like, okay, yes, you can rap, no question. In order for people to digest and appreciate your rhyming, you got to figure out the right 16 bars so that you give them the right amount that they can take in, and then give them a hook or a break so that they can process what you just said.
mhm,
Because you could be dope all day, but you have to give it to people in a way that they can actually digest it, kind of like sitting with trauma in little increments.
mhm,
And so the person that teaches you that, and as you're learning that, gets taken away from you so tragically. And then when I think about moments like Simon Says,
mhm,
you produce your own hit record.
mhm,
You make the beat, you produce the record, you come up with the flow that you've got the sing-alongable
mhm,
parts of the joy.
mhm,
You know what I'm saying? Like you create a record and it actually works.
mhm,
Like it's unequivocal. It's like doesn't have to be categorized. Like they're playing Simon Says at the game. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
at an NBA game, it's like undeniable. For an artist to be able to create one of those is such a miracle to
mhm,
be able to create it. And then to have something like that where like our most renowned underground, you know, John Coltrane mixed with Farrakhan guy, you know what I'm saying, gets one of those. And then to see the fact that like the way that you were just persecuted for, I mean, is it just that Ruckus didn't clear the sample? Like,
Pretty much. I mean, I was just telling this story the other day. My best friend Ty Stick, who was that DJ in the basement that was training me and Prince, our first DJ who, you know, had two turntables, direct drive belt, wasn't even techniques at the time, and we're recording the tape. The guy who told us, "I think you guys are ready. These tapes are getting really good. I think you guys are ready. You're sounding just as good as anybody on the radio." That guy went to Tower Records, bought some music, called me up and was like, "Yo, I got a gang of soul stuff, a gang of new music, some rock stuff. I think you want to come down. I got some monster movie shit that's incredible, and it's got all the stuff we used to watch after school for the after school specials, King Kong, Godzilla." And I was like, "All right, I'm gonna come down." Came down, we just chilling, talking, eating some food, playing music, and the shit plays, and I already just stared into space like, God, I already know what this is.
mm,
CD down, back to my house, throw it in, make the beat, and I'm just sitting there like, I already know what this is. I haven't even written the song yet. Listen to the beat for a couple of days, and I'm like saying to myself, you have to tell people what to do with this record. And as much as the record leaned club, the same type of thought process went into it. Like the character of that guy on that song, I was watching a lot of mob films and Italian films, so the voice is kind of like, get the fuck. It's not even technical Pharaoh voice. So I get into character on even that record. And it's like, get the fuck up. Get the fuck up. Like, what?
it's like, nah, see,
Right. And what can you say that people have to do what you say? And then the Simon thing came to my mind. I'm like, are you just, or even back then, I'm like, are you so old that people won't remember, Simon says do this. Simon didn't say do that. And how corny is that? How old is that? And then I'm thinking of Ghost and Ghostface use these, a lot of old cartoon references. I'm like, it doesn't matter. We'll go with Simon Says. And I started writing a chorus, and then the chorus got wordy. And then it's like, you know, New York City gritty. I'm like, no, at the time, if you think about the context, it's like choruses were more repetitive. Holla, holla, da, 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 da. Now, if you want this to really impact in the clubs, because mind you, I'm going to the tunnel at the time, and I'm that dude as well. And I'm like, you know what? Now, I think this is impactful enough to put your emotion on this song to say something about titties, which will get a response from people who know you. It's like, because they're gonna say, "Word." What is your response to that emotion? And be like, "Yeah, I said it. I'm thinking all of this out in terms of the chorus. When I finally get the chorus done, first verse done, I'm playing it for my friends. My friends are like, it's too complicated. It's still too complicated. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it. I think get the fuck up is enough simple instructions to balance out the rest of this long ass chorus that's not repetitive. Um, so that was all thought about. And then, rhyme wise, obviously, I'm like, I want to say rhymes that people will look in the mirror and say them themselves, like I used to do with L, like on "I'm Bad." Like I wanna
Mhm.
be that dude. I wanna write this song that way, not something you listen to, but something you say in the mirror. Those are my instructions to myself. We finished the
And
record.
it seemed very
hmm
intentional to make sure your name is in there. Y'all know the name.
hmm Exactly. You know, we bring the song in, and the label goes crazy. Headquarters, who Premier always famously mentions, was working at Ruckus at the time, and he just dapped me up. He was so excited. He was like, "Yo, this is crazy. This is just crazy. This is just crazy." And so it went on, whatever. But I bring them sample information, and they're still we're towards the middle and end of the record. We're still in a situation where it's like, do we need to clear this too? Maybe, yeah, we need to clear it. Need to clear it. And it's kind of like, isn't this going to go under the radar? I guess their thinking is. And, a couple of things in context transpired, which was I'm still working on the album when I delivered that song. So it wasn't supposed to hit when it hit. Buster comes to the studio to jump on the next shit, and my manager's like, "You gotta play him Simon Says." And I'm like, "It's not mixed, yeah, yeah. I'll play it for him." And he's like, "No, play it for him." And I play Buster the song, and he's like, "What the fuck? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" He's like, "Gotta give me a copy right now." I'm like, "Yo, it's not mixed, it's not this. We only have the dat." And he was like, "I need a copy right now." And I look at Bust, and I'm like, what are you gonna do with it? Like, he was like, "It's Buster Rhymes, bro." And I give him a copy of the dat. He calls me about 2 hours later. He was like, "I'm on my way to Hot 97 right now." He hand delivers the record to Flex. Flex calls me in the morning, 9 o'clock the next morning. I pick up the phone. This is Funkmaster Flex. "Who the fuck is this? Why the fuck you calling my phone?" "It's Funkmaster Flex. This is my second asthma attack phone call moment." He's like, "Yo, I hope you're ready." I'm like, "Don't say it." He was like, "Listen to the show tonight. I hope you're ready for this because it's about to go down." I'm like, "Fuck. Yes. No. Wait. We're not ready." I call the label and everybody at the label. I'm like, I think leak the record tonight. And that shit was just so impactful that we're now trying to play catch up, whatever. And they knew that the record would explode and be hot, but they didn't know that early and that the impact that Flex had breaking that record at the time would have on the country, on the scene. New York still had a place to break records physically. He then took the record to the tunnel. He then was like, "When I play this record."
New York City, when I tell you I got a joint here.
So as it got mixed and we caught up, it got added to 95% of the radio stations across the country that played hip hop. And we're trying to catch up to the record. Like at that point, Puff is walking out at Madison Square Garden to the song. Like people are like, I don't even know whose song this is. Like we're trying to get my face on the song. Everybody who's a fan of organizers like, bro, you ain't like they know they're trying to connect the two, and we're still trying to catch up to the song. Like that's how the shit took off. In the meantime, the business wasn't being taken care of, unbeknownst to me. So that's that little tidbit right there.
And so, I mean, the aftermath of that. So, I mean, you make a legitimate hit record, like you do it, like you do the thing that all the lyrical, super underground, conceptual rappers would like to do. Front like we don't. Well, I don't need to. I don't want to do that anyway. That's
Mm,
for suckers. That's whatever.
mm,
It's because we don't know how to do it, and then you do it, and then I mean, what was it like after the? So I mean, did the record get shut down? I mean, were you not able to? I know for a long time it wasn't available.
mm.
Like it felt like it got taken away. It felt like we did. Whoever, if you had it, you had it, but it felt like it wasn't accessible. It felt like it got wiped out for a long time.
Yeah, back then there was no digital. So literally when they say it was taken off the shelves, it was taken off the shelves. The distribution
Mhm.
of the record had to stop. It couldn't be sold. That's everything. The entire system's like we can't take it off of the vinyl anymore. You know what I mean? Like the whole project got shut down due to that. And at that point, if you quantify to this day, my people who work in my digital are still trying to get me a gold and platinum record for that, adding on digital to the actual sales. But if you can quantify what that song has done in streaming, even though, for a while it got pulled down from YouTube. I mean, it's up now because different levels and statutes and things have changed, but it's unfathomable what the record would have sold if under the same construct and the business of it would have been done properly.
I mean, not to count your money or watch your pockets, but do you eat off that song?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The in so many ways because just BMI and publishing and shows and
They didn't take your publishing. You get all your publishing from the record.
from when it's
Sometimes they hit you for a sample. They'll take your publishing too.
right.
I know Atmosphere got hit for a joint where they took. I mean,
Hmm.
the dude that created the original sample owned Slug's lyrics. Like
Hmm. Yeah, I still own my lyrics, and they still offered me an opportunity to redo the song with my lyrics, just not with the master usage of the sample on there. I've just chosen so far to not bastardize that record by not trying to recreate it. Just leave it. But I am working on structuring it again because I still get asked twice a month for licensing for films and all that shit, and that's just tons and tons of money that I'm missing out on. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
man, I appreciate you. I have a million other things I want to ask you about, but you've been so generous, man, with not only with your time, but also just with yourself. And um, it really means a lot, man. It really means a lot to have looked up to you for so long and just treasured you for so long, and then to become your friend and for you to do this podcast and murder me on my own record. And you know what's
Absolutely,
funny about that verse?
absolutely
you
not.
know
No, I
what's
disagree.
hilarious about that situated verse? So that you're doing like a double entendre on the whole thing.
Mm-hmm,
That's like black, and like you never know, like because the whole thing is about black,
mm-hmm,
and you never know, like, is he talking about black like in terms of evil, or is he talking about like black like pro black?
mm-hmm,
And so evidence, being evidence made that joint together. And yeah, you're right. Like I thought a 4 bar spit him, thought a 4 bar spit him, and then Ev would cut me off because he's like, man, don't do some little end of the line. don't do the end of the verse line where it ties it up all nice.
Mhm.
His mission on that album was like, all these little nice, cute things you do, we're getting rid of all that. You're not singing any hooks. There's no tear jerking stories about your dead mom, or like, we're not doing that.
Mhm.
Like, you're just gonna rap. And we're just like, I'm gonna make the beats on the spot. You're gonna rap. So when I was thinking in my last four bars, he would slide over to the keyboard and just be like, nope, done, save. You know what I'm saying? No last four bars, you're
Right.
done. So I got to the end of that one and I was like, okay, I think I might have a last four bars. And he's like, no, Pharaoh already has it. And I'm just like, I didn't know what he meant. And he's like, yeah, I sent it to, while you were doing that, you went to the bathroom, I bounced it and sent it to Pharaoh. He's gonna rap on it. And I'm like, oh, all right. All right, well, I'm gonna memorize this and then come back and spit. He's like, no, you're not. Like, it's done. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? But so like that double entendre thing that you did, Ev was like, either this stuff means like some devil stuff, and he's like rapping on his Muslim homie record about the devil, or he's talking about blackness and he's rapping on his albino homie's record about melanin. He's like, either way, you're getting stunted on. Like Ev is that dude for me. Like Evidence is like,
Yeah.
you talking about like the guy in the studio that's just like, nah,
Preem is that
that's
way too about vocals. I remember we did the vocal for OC, and I was like, oh, I could do it better. He was like, I got it. Y'all could just like it's good. You don't need to do it again. Trust me, I got it. And then in terms of I just felt like those bars fit culturally in terms of I want to talk about blackness in a way that I get to it, and then it becomes like what the universe was before everything started, and like a freestyle type of thing. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Mm.
that's how it ends, and it's perfect.
Hmm.
Cause yeah, the whole time it's like floating, and there's a point where you say, "Came out the womb on Halloween with affinity for 13 and black cats." Does it get any clearer? And it's like, no, we still don't know what you mean.
Hmm.
Like, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
But then by the time you get to the end, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
What existed before the Big Bang, and then it just cuts.
Hmm.
So ill,
Yeah, thanks, man.
so ill.
It's a dope song, man. It's a dope song. It's a dope project.
The we're talking about John Coltrane, and so I'm just wondering, so many like great artists usually have like a body of work, but then there's one thing that's almost like synonymous with them. It's like there's a certain body of work that, whether it's, the world puts it on them. So like John Coltrane, people always think Love Supreme, and John Coltrane has a million amazing songs and
Hmm.
albums, but people always think Love Supreme, and
Hmm.
it's fitting. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know how he would feel about that, but I would imagine he feel like Jay-Z seems to want everybody to know Reasonable Doubt. Like,
Hmm.
all these years later, he's like, you still don't understand how amazing Reasonable Doubt is. I'm gonna rap in now about my rhyming back then. But if you had one, if you out of all of the amazing things that you've given us, and that the things that are to come, if you had something that you wouldn't be mad if the culture looked back and said, Pharaoh and this particular piece of art that you've given the culture and the world, what would it be?
I can't. It's hard for me to do that, man. It's like I'm really like I entrusted to grow and fail so much that you know when I listen to the organized stuff, I know it's a product of an environment, a harsh environment, a loving environment. Losing my father, things that it is paint. It's a painting, but as an artist, I'm constantly like I have to get that dude as I get older or have a nuance to the new stuff that is beyond comparison to that stuff and age appropriate. And I really think time matters. Like I had put out Desire, it leaked, and the feedback, online is like, what's all this singing? What's all this soulful shit? What's all these instruments? Like, what the fuck? And they were looking for internal affairs, and I was just like, I'm glad people wanted the new album so much that it leaked. People were telling me usually that people usually don't give a shit. That means people give 'em. And I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at some of the criticism. And I was on the road in Prague with De La, Nas, and we were doing Rock the Bells in Europe. And I was on an elevator with them. And, my head was down and we were talking, and, Nas was like, these things need to mature. They're not like children, but like that in the aging process. Also, the people at the perspective that are 21 now that are going to hear this record, and he just broke it down in such a way that I didn't understand at the time. But then years later, when I asked about these records, they're literally people like, yo, Desire, man. Yo, Desire, man. I was on my first date. Da 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 da. Like J. Cole did the My Life song over the My Life chorus, and we were on the phone, and he's
Hmm.
like, I was dating this girl in high school, and we got my first, hoopty, and I used to take her out, and we used to listen to like, you can never change that about those experiences. So to him, like, my life might be the greatest thing I ever did because of his environment, his experiences. So, I mean, it's just hard to pick apart, the projects like that. So I hold it in a certain place in my heart in a specific area,
Hmm.
but not over or under anything, if that makes any sense.
A record like PTSD. So first of all, the Desire record, it's weird. Like I said, I just said PTSD is my favorite record. But in terms of like for me to listen to, because I always wanted to hear you sing like that,
Mm,
especially Pushing. Like,
mm,
man, Pushing to me is like, that's one of your greatest joints of all time.
mm,
Cause like we got these little glimpses of your singing similar to Yasin. I remember when Yasin did Memories don't live like
mhm,
people do.
mhm,
It's like because you get these little glimpses of Yasin singing,
mhm,
and it's like, man, this guy sounds like Gil Scott Heron or
mhm,
something. Like,
mhm.
can we just get like some more singing? And then once he did it, it's like, I knew it. It's
Mhm,
like there's like a tension that's built, and then when you finally hear it, it's that way. And on Oh No, you know, the first time that we hear you, that was like you cut loose on just that
mm,
hallelujah. That's like, man, like it's been building to that. You know what I
mhm,
mean? It's
mhm,
like a climax that we've been building. And so when Desire came out, that type of singing was like is something that I think we wanted to hear. But so PTSD though, for me, like as an artist, like I have a sense of what it takes to to put something like that into the world and what it does for people. And for those of us that are like underground and maybe didn't have hit records, we can say that like if I had to trade, so like if I could trade all of the hit records versus the songs that I've written that I know that people tell me like, hey, I'm here because I didn't kill myself because this song made me feel heard. So like that's something that I think, but I've never had a hit record.
mhm,
You're somebody that's had both. What's your relationship with the songs that you've made that have like really impacted culture and went around the world and got played at the, what I'm saying, at the Knicks game
mhm,
versus the music that didn't get played at the Knicks? Like they're never gonna play PTSD at the Knicks game,
mhm.
but that type of feeling that like I know you've seen tattoos where people tattoo those words on their body.
Mhm,
I know that there are people that are like, yes, this great artist made the piece of art that it didn't go number one on the radio, but it made life livable for somebody like
Right.
me. I thought I was crazy until Pharaoh shared this. What's your relationship with those two types of responses from people?
I hold the latter in the highest regard, and it means everything to me. It's why I do it. It's the redemption. It's the energy. It's we're receiving. I feel like we're not in control anyway, and receiving these words, and it gives it intent and purpose. It's the job of an artist. It's my job. It's my way to give back in a pretentious way. It's what will remain when we're not here anymore. So it was very important for me to have pieces of stuff that somebody could look to and get inspiration from. it can happen with both things. Like even with Simon, I'm like in the moment the song was so enthusiastic, and I got to get up and get on the dance floor. I got to get up and do energy. I used to be like, what if that's the moment that the shy kid dances his first year in college, and he meets his love, and because of bam, 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 he was like, I'm gonna dance to this record, but still he meets his love, and they have the child that makes the difference in the revolution of all of this. And I really look at all of our art as artists as those things that continuously can do that. So I'm looking at it all the time. But my life, was an aspect to where it was the first time I would be in the car and someone would recognize me or be playing the song and talk about that song on a hood level and put their fist to their heart and be like, this shit got me through my bid. This shit got me through
Yes,
this. And that was the first time I was like, whoa, whoa, this is a whole new cultural black level of thing that I had yet to experience in terms of song and who it impacted. And so, I just hold that there. I remember the guy's face. I hold those moments dear to my heart. The people I spoke to backstage on the PTSD shows that was like, I'm in recovery. I'm 2 years clean. I'm just like, this is crazy. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure I'm not the only music that they look to, but I've always taken this as a responsibility, hip hop being let into the culture in terms of, you got a spot in this culture. You got to let the energy know why you deserve to be here always. And you can't take it for granted. So you got to show with art or with lyrics or with something that this is a deserving thing. And I think that's why some of the people who are cut from that cloth feel a way about generations who don't maybe take a deeper look into what the past has gave us in terms of this platform. But those were always things I was building on in terms of you can't take this opportunity and this platform for granted. You know what I mean? Like try to move people, try to encourage people. In
absolutely.
short, I don't have an answer for that one. It's hard for me.
And as I was thinking about that, it's like, man, I don't know any artist that would say that. Maybe with the exception of Jay-Z being like, y'all don't understand how dope reasonable doubt is. But man, well, you're just a treasure, man. You're a living treasure, and I, we've gotten so much just from listening to you and from your music, and you know, being brothers. I did the Shadows in the Sun anniversary tour, and we played First Ave, and it was sold out. And that was, a pretty like meaningful moment to me. And I got to the show, and you were just there chilling, and I kind of was like, "Oh man, I gotta go try to rap my first record in front of Pharaoh." And I almost had to like, "Okay, all right," you know what I mean? And we got done, and my wife came, and I think my wife was like super pregnant at the time,
Mhm.
and she she told me afterwards, she was like, "Man, you were up, doing one of the joints," and she said that you looked at her and was like, "Man, I think I'd be rapping. Look at your husband up there." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And just hearing that later on, man, that because you know what those types of things means
yeah.
coming from the people that you look up to, And I love you beyond words, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I love you too, man. Like, uh, I knew this would be, you know, therapeutic as well as tell some stories that new fans may not know or new heads may not know, as well as be interesting. And I appreciate it. And that was a great moment, man. I love that photo that we have from backstage. Um,
Yeah, shout out my man Mike Madison,
mhm,
who's also a great MC, but he's an amazing photographer. And yeah, just really, I didn't even know he was there.
mhm, and, just like, you look at me that way, I look at you that way, and was marveling, and she caught me in the moment of marveling, like, literally, like, "I can't do that. Like, I can't do that." Like, that is what this is all
You
about.
stop that right now. And my wife is from the Bronx and we met at SOBs.
Mm,
So it's like it's one thing for a man to say that to another man. It's another thing for a man to say it to another man's wife
mm,
and for her to tell like the fact
mm,
that like you said that to her and then because she waited till we got home.
mm.
She was like, you know what I mean? We got home, she was like, yo, check out what your man said while you were on stage.
Nah, it's true. That's
It's like
100% the truth from my
I
heart,
wouldn't if they asked me like, "Do you want a Grammy or do you want that story?" I'm choosing that story. Allah is my witness.
Oh, that's dope, man.
Yeah. Man, well, thank you for giving so much, brother. And I think maybe we'll use that photo as the cover for this episode.
That's
I'm
crazy.
glad you brought that
That's
up.
dope. That's dope. That's a dope idea.
Yeah. Take good care, brother. I love you. Appreciate you.
Love you,
All
man.
right. Talk
Thank
at
you, man.
yourself.
I appreciate it.
Peace, peace.
All right.
Special thanks to Pharoahe Monch for being just so generous with his time and with his thoughts and with his insights. And he just was extremely authentic and real, and he's always that way, but there's something about this connection between artists that I'm so very grateful for. You see, I always get a little emotional, and I hadn't planned to tell this story about Pharaoh telling my wife when I was on stage rapping my first album, this album Shadows on the Sun, that when we made it, nobody knew who I was except for a few people in Minneapolis that attended the open mics and stuff. Nobody knew who I was. I didn't know if anybody would ever hear me. And the day that I'm talking about was the 15-year anniversary of that album. I think it's coming up on 20 years actually now, but Pharoah was at First Avenue, the iconic club in Minneapolis. I didn't know he was going to be at the show, and I'm standing up performing my first album, and he's there, and I'm just so giddy that he's there, and we're talking and stuff. And then my wife tells me when we got home, when you were on stage, Pharaoh just kept going on and on to me, to my wife, who's a hip hop head, who also loves Pharaoh, just saying some really beautiful things about your brother here. And that it's just like, man, that type of love that people show and showing it in different ways, that like I'm performing this album I made when I didn't know if anybody would ever know who I was. And now Pharoah Monch, who is one of my hands down favorites of all time, is watching me perform it, celebrating me, and then telling my wife, just so that when I get to hear it, there's this added layer of my wife saying, "Man, I wish you could have heard what Pharaoh was saying about you when you're on stage." Stuff just really means a lot. So I'm really grateful to share this. And it takes a lot for artists who we have so much access to them, and artists have so little privacy that when people open up the way that they do oftentimes on this podcast, I'm very, very grateful for it. It's a gift to us all. So much love to Pharoah Monch and much love to his team for helping get everything cracking and getting it all set up. I'm really very, very appreciative. Um, Head to brotherali.com and come see us on tour. We're on our East Coast leg of our tour now. The two Minneapolis shows are sold out. Some of the other shows are almost sold out. It's not a long run, but it's one that I've really been looking forward to. We have a VIP where people come in and we basically do almost an episode of the podcast, but it's a conversation between me and the people that do VIP. You also get an exclusive shirt and a laminate and things like that. You get to come in early. This tour is really dope. The West part of the tour was incredible. I'm so happy to be on stage again, so happy to be with people again and performing music again. I'm just in better shape. My voice is in better shape. I'm feeling good. Was really happy to be back. So I'm really happy to be on this East Coast part of the tour now. So head to brotherali.com, see all of our tour dates, get down with the merch. There's merch for the podcast. You can see all the stuff that we're doing. We have a new 12-inch. At the time that I'm recording this, it's not out yet, but maybe it's out now. Um, Basically a maxi single, a old school maxi single where you get 3 joints, but 3 songs. We made only 500 copies of this really beautiful vinyl, If that hasn't already been announced, you might be hearing a little earlier than most people are hearing it, but that announcement is coming. And if you're on brotherali.com, you'll hear about it first. And so if you want to grab one of these very few copies of this 12-inch, you'll be one of the few to have first access to it. Sign up for the caravan, all that good stuff. Much love and special thanks to Mansour Panawala, Amna Mirza. Special thanks to Last Word and to Aida Rashid. Special thanks to Mark from Medina Hip Hop that created the stamp logo that's on the merch for the podcast. Very, very grateful. Much love to my man Ant, who produced the song called The Travelers, and that's the music that we use for the podcast. And he gave us permission to use that. Special thanks to Darian Washington, everybody that's part of this podcast. Special thanks to you. Travelers Podcast is produced by Brendan Kelly, aka BK1, from the South Side of Minneapolis, and it's a production of Travelers Media. I love you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.